hill rests at EVERFREE's edge. A creek curves along its base, and flowers and grass spread out over the surrounding field, dotted with small wooden creatures. Turbulent Breeze paces back and forth, fuming along EVERFREE's edge as Silverstreak watches her.
If I have to drag that idiot out of the forest, so help him.
Silver shakes his head. Breeze stomps a hoof hard.
Wild!
Wild and Tinea hide behind a large hedge. Wild shushes Tinea and nervously looks over his shoulders.
Shh! No! What part of basic training don't you get? I was pushed into it and found leaving in the dead of night the best way out of it.
Wild peers out through the hedge and watches Breeze pace back and forth.
My parents wanted a respectable career for me.
And biologist doesn't count?
In Cloudsdale? Yeah, no. Didn't even bother to ask.
Tinea rolls her eyes. Breeze grabs a rock off the ground and tosses it up and down in one hoof. Wild takes a deep breath and relaxes behind the bush.
But don't worry, they still don't know us.
A rock smacks Wild in the head, and he cries out in pain.
We know where you are, Wild!
Wild rubs his head.
Do you have a plan B? One that does not involve imprisonment?
You have till the count of 3, Wild, to maintain some dignity!
Wild stops rubbing his head.
1,
Well, sorta.
2,
Tinea nervously glances through the hedge.
What is it?
3.
Wild takes a deep breath and jumps through the hedge. Breeze grins joyfully.
Time's up.
Wild nonchalantly emerges from EVERFREE's tree line and chuckles falsely. Breeze frowns.
Turbulent Breeze? Silverstreak? What a surprise to see you here!
Silver glances over to Breeze.
Looks like you didn't get to put him in a chokehold.
Breeze grinds her teeth.
Shut it!
Wild steps before Breeze and Silver. Breeze yanks Wild closer by his neck.
Wild, do you know what group punishment entails?
Wild gulps. Tinea peeps through the hedge and watches Wild get scolded by Breeze.
Rather disappointing, wasn't it?
Cadmian fades into view behind Tinea and rests her head on Tinea's shoulder. Tinea squeaks and squirms away from the hedge until she slams into a tree trunk. Silver gazes into the forest as Breeze yells at Wild.
You think I love wasting what little free time I have chasing you?
Silver returns his gaze to Wild and chuckles. Tinea hyperventilates with her back to the tree trunk.
You!
Cadmian struts up to Tinea.
I would advise you to be quiet, my little changeling.
Tinea glares at Cadmian.
What are you doing here?
Cadmian hunches her shoulders.
Oh, what I always do best. Create some tension here, some conflict there. Generally stir the pot.
Tinea sighs and lifts her back off the tree trunk.
Whatever it is, I will not be a part of it.
Cadmian chuckles.
You are adorable when you're trying to be tough. All I want to offer you is the chance to advance the plot.
Tinea tilts her head in confusion. Cadmian points towards Wild, Breeze, and Silver's location.
That fool who got you through EVERFREE can also get you to Cloudsdale to reunite with your delightfully despicable sister.
Tinea looks away from Cadmian.
Why would my sister be in Cloudsdale?
Cadmian chuckles.
Why, because it's all part of the plan.
Tinea steps back aghast.
How?
Please, I was following since you entered EVERFREE.
Tinea turns pale.
Don't worry, your plan is respectable.
Tinea glares at Cadmian.
Oh, thanks. I hold your gratitude in high regards.
As you should.
Tinea's mouth opens to speak, but freezes mid-thought. Cadmian cackles. Tinea groans and throws her hooves in the air in frustration.
Why am I even talking to you? You tried to kill me.
Silver glances into the forest as Breeze violently shakes Wild by the neck.
If it wasn't for the Major's request, so help me!
Silver's gaze returns to Wild and Breeze. Tinea covers her mouth with her hooves with a panicked expression on her face.
I'm not asking you to trust me, just them, and yourself.
Cadmian's eyes glance towards Wild, Silver, and Breeze. Tinea lowers her hooves.
They will take me to prison. Why in Equestria would they help a changeling?
A bright light blinds Tinea. Chrysalis stands in Cadmian's place.
If you really can't figure this out, then I really have failed with you.
Stop that.
A light flashes, and Cadmian stands before Tinea with a mischievous grin.
Seriously, though, hitchhiking is second nature to your kind.
Tinea raises a hoof in protest and lowers it limply.
Look, I'm not good with magic. Even if I was, my reserves are drained.
Oh?
Cadmian flicks Tinea's jagged horn, and pink neon sparks fall to the ground before Tinea. Tinea lunges back in shock.
Seems adequate for a transformation or two.
Tinea composes herself as she rubs her head.
So, Pupa Tinea.
Cadmian leaps into the air above Tinea and stays fixed in place. Tinea glances up to her nervously.
Are you ready for a makeover?
Tinea shudders violently. Wild cowers before Breeze as she yells at him.
I don't know why in Equestria every pony had such high hopes for such a slacker!
Cadmian lays in the air as a pink flash shines below her. Cadmian recoils in dismay and slowly tilts her head inquisitively.
You were going for a female, right?
Breeze pulls Wild to his feet as Silver watches from a safe distance.
So please, we're all ears. Explain yourself.
Wild gulps and glances into the sky.
You see, it just felt like a good night to take a glide.
Cadmian stretches midair. A pink light flashes below her. She peers down and rolls her eyes.
Well, the sixth try is a distinct improvement, but...
But what?
Cadmian points down with one paw.
Your color palettes don't mix. Your eyes look like a cat. Just why?
Cadmian throws out her second front paw.
And for mischief's sake, drop the horn. You're not Celestia's long-lost niece.
Tinea groans below Cadmian. Cadmian takes a deep breath and exhales.
Let's try a cooler color palette.
Wild cowers below Breeze, trembling with fear as Silver watches from behind. Silver shakes his head. He checks the time on her wristwatch and jolts.
Turby, I know this is your favorite pastime, but you could chew Wild out later.
Breeze turns around and faces Silver.
Don't call me Turby!
Silver points to his watch.
You have been at it for 20 minutes. Any more and we'll be AWOL too.
A vein twitches on Breeze's head, and she stomps her hoof.
Fine, but this is not...
Breeze turns back to Wild, and finds him standing straight up and casual with a playful smile.
I hate you.
Cadmian rests sprawled on her back in midair. Her ears twitch, and she jolts up.
Looks like time's up.
Cadmian peers down. She scratches her chin in thought.
I guess that's adequate. The clover adds charm, so make sure not to lose it. You'll need all the help you can get.
Thanks.
Bushes rustle under Cadmian as Cadmian eyes that direction. She flinches and waves her front paws back and forth.
Stop!
What?
You can't go out as a blank flank. You need a cutie mark. And one that's cute.
Cadmian smiles devilishly.
Why is that relevant?
Reasons.
Wild, Breeze, and Silver prepare to take off with their backs towards EVERFREE. Breeze points towards Wild.
No more funny business. Or else.
Not even my witty humor.
Breeze whacks Wild on the head.
Ow!
Silver shakes his head and glimpses towards EVERFREE. His eyes widen.
What the?
Wild flinches as Breeze turns around to face EVERFREE. Breeze scowls. Wild slowly pans his head around as a bead of sweat rolls down his brow. Wild's head jolts back as his eyes widen.
Sweet Celestia!
Pegasus Pupa Tinea. Female Pegasus. Non-colored blue fur coat. Pale light grayish rose mane color. Long and loose mane cut. Bandaged wings. Lone butterfly cutie mark. Nervously steps out from EVERFREE's tree line. Tinea blushes.
Wild, if I could ask you one more favor.
Tinea's rask-of-neck clover sparkles in her mane.
If it's not too much trouble.
Breeze and Silver turn to Wild simultaneously. Silver beams as Breeze sneers.
You stallion!
Wild blinks.
Tinea?
Who else?
Tinea blows a loose hair strand off her face. Breeze yanks Wild close to her and glares down at him.
Yes, Wild. Who else?
Wild gulps. Silver gently pushes Wild and Breeze apart.
Turby, watch your temper. You'll scare the poor filly.
Breeze stares daggers at Tinea.
So all this was over a bucking date?
Tinea cowers in Breeze's shadow.
It was not a date.
Breeze circles Tinea.
Huh?
It was not a date.
Stop mumbling!
Tinea stomps her hoof down.
It was not a date. He rescued me from EVERFREE after my wings got injured.
Breeze opens her mouth to speak. Silver's hoof clogs her mouth.
Sorry, my dear. My partner hasn't been hitting the hay enough lately and is a little cranky.
Breeze bites down on Silver's hoof, and he screams as he removes it. Silver attempts to compose himself while he shakes his hoof in pain.
See? Now what is this favor?
Tinea glances back at her wings.
My wings are not yet strong enough to reach high altitudes. I'll need some assistance in reaching Cloudsdale. If it is not too much trouble.
Silver stares longingly into Tinea's eyes.
Not at all.
Breeze elbows Silver in his chest.
For once, I agree.
Then why did you?
Breeze glares Silver into silence and glances to Tinea with a demonic grin.
As I was saying, I agree. Because I'm sure our major would love to meet you.
Wild face-hoofs himself.
Oh no.
Cadmian watches Wild, Tinea, Breeze, and Silver from behind tree branches as she hovers in midair. Breeze soars into the sky as Silver offers Tinea assistance. Wild runs up behind them and helps Tinea into the air. Silver sulks. Cadmian grins.
Now, the fun begins.
Cadmian stretches and struts higher into the air as she fades away. Wild lifts Tinea through the air as Breeze and Silver fly ahead.
Regretfully, her words of truth. Our magic is similar.
Fascinating.
Wild glances ahead and sees Breeze and Silver arguing. He returns his focus to Tinea.
I take it your sis is in Cloudsdale for the games.
In theory.
Tinea peers down at the forest below as it slowly shrinks. Wild beams.
It must have been fate you bumped into me then.
More like the misfortune.
Wild and Tinea's heads jolt to the right as Silver casually flies next to them.
Tinea, was it?
Tinea nods uncomfortably.
Well, Tinea, rest at ease. If the mad grounds this idiot, I'll personally ensure you get a proper tour of the stadium.
Oh no.
Major of Aeronautics displays, our commander's title.
Wild flies left with Tinea, away from Silver. Breeze glides to Wild's left and boxes in Wild and Tinea.
I can't believe he made me play errand girl for you!
Turby, he sent all the cadets out.
Breeze glares at Silver.
Breeze, my dad is dense, but he's not that dense. He knows it's over. I hope.
Tinea glances back and forth between Wild and Breeze. Her eyes widen.
Wait, Dad?
Silver flies low next to Tinea.
He's never told you?
Well, relationships are a really awkward subject to...
Breeze strikes Wild on his head.
Not that, you idiot!
Wild jolts.
Oh!
Wild stares down to Tinea.
Remember how I sort of mentioned my parents? Well, my dad sort of runs the Wonderbolts.
Wild, Tinea, Silver, and Breeze fly into a large cloud. Cloudsdale floats on the horizon, surrounded by soft, fluffy clouds. Pegasi fly around the city. Wild emerges from a cloud, followed by Breeze and Silver, lifting Tinea together.
Welcome to Cloudsdale.
Wild flies over Cloudsdale's weather factory as ponies attend to several rainbow-colored pools. He points to them like a tour guide.
Our weather production?
Wild peers down.
Looks like terrible thunderstorms ahead. Hectic.
Wild soars over a massive cloud coliseum. Breeze and Silver follow as they struggle to hold Tinea. Pegasi run around the track as coaches watch. Several Pegasi heave a wooden crate with a firework logo on its side into the stadium center. Tinea notices several unicorns zapping the stadium's clouds with their magic.
The Cloudsdale Stadium. Currently being ground safe for the games. Can't exactly have flightless ponies fall through.
Breeze shrugs and exhales a deep breath.
Yet one of our duties is still watching for stray fallers. For multi-hour shifts.
Wild giddily flies over a massive cloud Parthenon-like building resting atop an isolated hill. Breeze and Silver strain to keep up as they carry Tinea.
Why, exactly, are we taking the scenic route?
Do you want to play hide and seek with Wild again?
Wild points to the Parthenon structure with his whole body.
And that marvellous structure is the newly renovated Avian Zoo, now with soundproofing.
Why soundproofing?
Breeze and Silver groan.
Have you ever had one of those mornings you don't feel like getting up? Add thousands of bird calls to that mix.
It was the fastest levee passed in Cloudsdale history.
A runway stretches alongside a multi-story cloud building with pillars along its entrance guarded by armored Pegasi. Military-style barracks lie in a row on the runway's opposite side. Wild, Breeze, Silver, and Tinea fly above the base. Wild sulks and limply points down.
And here's Cloudsdale's Wonderbolt base.
6 Wonderbolts fly overhead in a V formation, leaving a lightning trail in their wake. Wild lands on the runway as Breeze and Silver lay Tinea down gently and collapse out of breath. Wild and Tinea uncomfortably sit on a bench next to a wooden door with closed blinds. A label alongside the door reads, Major Starshot. A Pegasi pair pass by Wild and Tinea. The pair glances at Wild and Tinea and whisper between themselves. One giggles as they leave Tinea's sight. Wild peers towards Tinea and down to his hoofs.
I'm sorry I got you involved.
Tinea examines her non-photo blue hooves.
I never inquired, so the fault is mine as well. The signs were all there, in retrospect.
Tinea lowers her hooves.
However, I must now inquire about your father.
Wild flinches and appears nauseous.
What's about him?
Will he be one to ask about ID?
Oh, that.
Wild wipes sweat off his brow.
No, he's not one to worry about that. It's just, he's sorta odd.
Tinea stares at Wild and raises an eyebrow. The door handle clatters and draws Wild and Tinea's attention. Breeze sulks as she steps out the office's door and waves Tinea and Wild in.
This way, please.
Thin light beams pierce through closed blinds as Tinea and Wild enter the dark room. They squint as they look around. The door behind them slams shut, and Wild and Tinea jump into each other's hooves. Tinea and Wild glance at each other and bolt apart.
Sorry about
Let
that.
me apologize.
The blinds burst open and flood the room with light.
Welcome to Cloudsdale, Tinea.
Starshot, male Pegasus, yellow fur coat, crimson red mane with a golden outline, yellow eyes, exploding motor shell firework cutie mark, wearing a Wonderbolt's commander uniform, has his hooves outstretched in excitement. Starshot nods at Breeze and Silver as they stand behind Wild and Tinea on opposite ends. Silver and Wild pop party poppers with mortified expressions on their faces.
Huzzah!
Tinea gawks around the room confused and pale as snow.
What in Celestia?
Wild facehuffs himself.
Dad, what's the meaning of this?
Starshot drops under 4 hooves and tilts his head at a sharp angle.
An obvious rescue operation naughty student achieved 200% success.
Starshot leaps over to Tinea and energetically shakes her hoof.
And what kind of gentle colt would I be not to give a proper Wonderbolt welcome to my son's new mare friend?
Starshot kisses Tinea in her hoof. Tinea stumbles back with a red face. Breeze grinds her teeth as Silver watches her.
So he did forget.
Wild steps between Starshot and Tinea as Starshot inflates a balloon.
Dad, it's not like...
Wild notices Starshot holding a balloon over his head labeled Featherwild X Tinea.
That's... How did you get these made so fast?
Wild shakes his head.
Look, Dad.
Wild points to Tinea's bandaged wings.
All I did was rescue Tinea while I was traversing EVERFREE.
Wild points towards Starshot's balloon.
So stop with this shipping nonsense.
Starshot sulks.
Aww.
Starshot's balloon pops and falls on his head.
I'm never going to get some grand foals to spoil.
Wild sighs and glances back to Tinea, trembling in shock.
My father, Starshot. He may not seem like it, but he's a major of aeronautic displays.
Starshot bows.
Madame?
Wild rolls his eyes. Tinea calms down and color returns to her face as she stares towards Starshot.
Hello.
Starshot turns to Wild with a serious face.
Well, maybe this is for the best. It makes it a lot easier to explain to her.
Wild gulps.
How did she take my absence?
Tinea notes Breeze and Silver's cold sweat. Starshot stares at Wild, horror-struck.
Son, just make sure you have all your holes filled in your alibi.
Wild glances away from Starshot.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
So you couldn't have just flown up to get Tinea some aid?
Wild's eyes twitch.
Clever Colt.
Did you say something, my dear?
Tinea appears like a deer caught in headlights. She raises a hoof over her mouth and coughs.
Wild had a minor wing injury after he saved me from the Hydra. He could still fly, but not support my weight, and he dared not leave me alone. In EVERFREE, with a sprained wing.
Silver raises his hoof.
She is abnormally dense.
Breeze elbows Silver's shoulder.
What?
Starshot snaps his hoof.
See, Wild, always forgetting the important details.
Starshot pulls Wild and Tinea into a dual hug.
And don't forget them. All the game security preparations are driving her batty.
Starshot releases Wild and Tinea from his grip.
Not in a fun way.
3 hard knocks echo from the door. Wild and Starshot's heads turn to the door in unison.
Speaking of
the door bursts open. A pony silhouette with red eyes peers into the room. Breeze and Silver spot the eyes and stand at attention. Tinea notices Wild shivering. Peregrine, female bat pony, brown fur coat that fades on her legs. Dark brown mane with black highlights with a black strand falling on her face. Red eyes. Wearing a purple necklace and helmless night guard armor that reveals her soaring falcon cutie mark. Steps through the door. Peregrine's day guard, male Pegasus, Royal Guard uniform, and Peregrine's night guard, male bat pony, Night Royal Guard uniform. Walk in behind Peregrine on opposite sides. A silver crescent moon medal on Peregrine's side glistens as she strides towards Wild. Peregrine stops before Wild and glares down to him.
Wild, you have a lot of explaining to do.
Wild gulps.
Well, you see, it's sort of a long story. I'm sure you don't have time.
Peregrine glances to Tinea and looks daggers at her.
Cadets Turbulent Breeze and Silver Streak.
Breeze and Silver salute Peregrine from behind.
Yes, ma'am.
Peregrine's gaze remains fixed on Tinea.
I need you two to investigate a disturbance in a supplies warehouse for the games.
Breeze and Silver salute Peregrine and bolt out the door. Peregrine turns to Wild and smiles lightly.
I believe I just made enough time.
Wild breaks eye contact with Peregrine.
Okay, lover.
Rows of Pegasi practice martial arts in harmony atop padded mats in a square 2-floor gym. Wild, Tinea, Starshot, Peregrine, and her guards walk along a balcony overlooking the gym's first floor. Tinea observes the Pegasi below grunt as they strike the air. A target range filled with ice chunks stretches out on the airbase's edge. Half a dozen Pegasi lock ice arrows into their bows as Wild, Tinea, Starshot, Peregrine, and her guards walk behind them.
So I couldn't just leave her alone in EVERFREE.
The Pegasi archers draw back their bows in unison. Tinea stops and observes the archers.
Are they training for the Equestria Games?
Peregrine steps beside Tinea and leans in next to her ear.
In a way.
Cartoonish, changeling-like monster targets spring up on the range. The Pegasi loose their arrows in unison. Several dozen ice arrows nail their targets. Ice spreads over and encapsulates them. Tinea watches the targets. Her eyes are as wide as saucers. Pegasi squads march lockstep on the airstrip's perimeter near the barracks. Several armored Pegasi land side to side on the airstrip. Peregrine and her guards lead Wild, Tinea, and Starshot on the airstrip's opposite side. Wild walks beside Peregrine as she scolds him.
Wild, I expected you to at least.
Peregrine spots LAELAPS, large white-winged hound with bright green eyes, tugging a Wonderbolt cadet towards her.
Ah, there she is.
LAELAPS' ears twitch. She soars towards Peregrine and drags her Wonderbolt walker across the ground. Wild nervously glances back to Tinea.
That's...
Peregrine holds a hoof out towards LAELAPS.
Heel.
LAELAPS stops midair, inches before Peregrine. The Wonderbolt cadet groans on the ground. Peregrine turns towards Tinea as she calmly pets LAELAPS and carefully watches Tinea.
Has my son told you about LAELAPS?
Peregrine nudges LAELAPS towards Tinea.
Brilliant animal, with unparalleled loyalty and endurance.
LAELAPS sniffs Tinea.
But what I've found most useful is her ability to see through all illusions.
LAELAPS snarls. Peregrine raises an eyebrow. Her two guards glance at one another and stiffen their posture. Wild steps between Peregrine and Tinea.
Now that you mention it, I did sorta indirectly mention her when we ran into Cadmian.
You don't say.
Tinea gulps and stretches her hoof out to LAELAPS.
Yes, we stumbled across her in EVERFREE.
Wild looks around nervously.
Did I not mention that part?
Peregrine steps towards Wild and Tinea.
No. But I'm interested in hearing Tinea's perspective.
Peregrine sees Tinea rubbing LAELAPS' belly as the hound floats upside down in midair.
You're such a good girl, putting that stupid fox in her place.
LAELAPS' leg twitches. Tinea looks up to Peregrine nervously. Peregrine glares at Tinea with a poker face. Breeze flies low over the runway and lands clumsily. She rushes over to Peregrine out of breath.
I think this matter needs your attention, ma'am.
Peregrine turns away from Tinea and rolls her eyes.
What is the situation, Cadet?
Breeze salutes Peregrine.
It's hard to explain. Some unclaimed cargo, and the freight pony wants to know how to handle it.
Peregrine exhales.
Fine. This should be quick.
Peregrine glares at Wild.
But don't think this is over.
Peregrine glances at Tinea.
For either of you two.
Peregrine leaps into the air and does a mid-air flip. She hovers above Tinea and Wild as her guards follow her lead.
And Wild, before reporting for a double shift security detail, put LAELAPS in her kennel.
Peregrine peers towards Breeze.
Now lead on, Cadet.
Breeze salutes Peregrine.
Yes, ma'am.
Breeze stumbles backward into Tinea while facing Peregrine. She turns around and bows slightly towards Tinea.
My apologies.
Breeze runs forward and leaps into the air. She soars into the distance, followed by Peregrine and her two guards. Wild and Starshot watch Peregrine vanish from sight.
Well, that went smoother than expected.
Agreed.
Tinea watches Breeze fly away with a concerned look. LAELAPS hovers next to Tinea. She licks Tinea's cheek, and her tongue leaves a drool path in its wake. Tinea gags. A square military room's paint is covered in scratches. Several barred windows line the upper walls. The room's back half is a steel-barred dog kennel filled with pet toys. Wild and Tinea struggle as they pull LAELAPS into the room by her leash. She playfully attempts to fly off in random directions. Wild's rear hits the kennel's bars.
Tinea!
Tinea glances over to Wild and sees him nodding towards the cage door's latch. She lets the leash go and quickly opens the kennel. LAELAPS flies towards the room's exit and knocks Wild off his legs. Tinea picks up a squeaky toy, examines it, and squeaks it. LAELAPS flying tackles Tinea into the kennel. A large cloud-walled warehouse is stacked with various sized wooden crates. The crates creak and sway in the dim light. Breeze leads Peregrine and her two guards down a crate row.
Let's make this quick, Cadet. I have a certain security breach I need to personally handle.
Breeze flinches and looks back to Peregrine.
Don't worry, this won't take long.
Breeze, Peregrine, and her guards come out onto a small clearing at the warehouse's edge, with a single, isolated shipping crate at its center. Its doors are smashed open. Peregrine jolts as she sees the crate's snapped planks and eyes the green residue alongside the doors. Peregrine shoves herself past Breeze and runs up to the crate. She examines the green residue and deep scratch marks.
This is worse than I thought.
Light reflects off a red cloth covering a pony-sized cage inside the shipping crate. The cage trembles, and mumbling echoes from underneath. Peregrine glances back to her guards and nods in the cage's direction. The guards rush to the cage on opposite sides, and they take battle stances as Peregrine moves between them. Peregrine grips the cloth.
Cadet, I need you to grab reinforcements.
Breeze grins maliciously. Peregrine yanks the red cloth off the cage. Breeze and Silver, hogtied and gagged, squirm about violently inside the cage.
Don't worry.
4 changelings tackle Peregrine's guards from behind. Peregrine turns around and sees Breeze, Fake, approaching her with 3 changelings falling behind her.
The reinforcements are already here.
Breeze and the changelings lunge at Peregrine. Wild slams the kennel's door shut and securely latches it up. He falls to his knees, exhaling rapidly.
Well, that could have gone better.
Tinea stands behind Wild and shakes off dog slobber.
It could have gone a lot worse.
Tinea thrusts out her hoof accusingly towards Wild.
My mother is General of the Night, highest-ranking officer in the EUP. How do you not consider that an important detail for an illegal immigrant?
Wild blushes and looks away from Tinea.
I just didn't want you to worry.
Wild faces Tinea.
But yeah, you should likely avoid her. She can be rather scary while in war mode.
Breeze, Fake, and Peregrine wrestle outside the cracked cargo container. Breeze leaps onto Peregrine's back and attempts to choke her. Peregrine bucks wildly. She stops, leans back, and stands on her back 2 hooves. Peregrine grabs Breeze, pulls Breeze halfway over her right shoulder, and performs a judo throw. Breeze spins forward as Peregrine slams Breeze into the floor. Peregrine stumbles backward, breathing heavily, and spits off to the side. Breeze, Fake, groans unconscious as Peregrine lifts her up and tosses her into an 11 changeling pile. The bruised changelings moan in pain. Peregrine glances back to the cargo container and observes her 2 knocked out guards. She shakes her head.
It seems I need to increase their training regiment.
Peregrine's ears twitch, and she turns around frantically. A green magic sphere strikes Peregrine's side and explodes. Peregrine soars through the air and crashes into the warehouse's wall. She struggles to stand and regain her composure. Chrysalis's silhouette appears in the warehouse's shadows. Her bright green eyes shine through the darkness.
Pathetic.
Peregrine glares at Chrysalis as green light glows brighter and magic hums.
Do I have to do everything myself?
Torches light a tight room with swords and spears mounted all along its sides. An anvil with a small forge hammer on it sits before a back doorway. Wild and Tinea enter through the main entrance opposite the back door. Tinea nervously observes the sharp blades on the wall as Wild walks up to the anvil. Wild peers through the back door and notices the hammer. He grabs it and whacks the anvil. The anvil chimes loudly. Tinea turns to Wild as his hammer-holding hoof vibrates painfully.
How many times have I got to tell you brats?
Cloudsdale blacksmith, dark-colored Pegasus, wearing an eye patch and work apron, a winged anvil cutie mark, strides through the back door, carrying a dented helmet in one hoof.
This is not an answering bell.
Wild waves at the blacksmith, and the blacksmith shudders.
I thought you were lost and EVERFREE.
I wish. Got stuck with night duty.
How unfortunate. Let me guess, you misplaced the armor I so painstakingly crafted for you once more.
Wild forces a laugh.
You make it sound so routine.
The blacksmith groans and walks into the back room.
If I'm lucky, there's only mere armor left.
Tinea steps beside Wild.
Might I ask what happened to it?
Wild shrugs.
The biologist needs no armor.
Then why don't you tell them that?
He hates me enough already.
Tinea raises an eyebrow.
Oh, right, my parents.
Surely you've told them about your scientific ambitions.
Wild leans back and forth on his hooves.
Well, they're aware of my hobbies.
Wild.
Look, my family's warrior roots are older than Celestia.
Wild sulks.
I don't want to be the one to buck it all up.
Really? You're doing a bang-up job.
The blacksmith enters through the back door with a crate, overflowing with armor. Tinea stands in a hallway outside the blacksmith's entrance. Tinea hears metallic clangs from the blacksmith's room. Wild stiffly steps through the doorway, wearing mismatched night guard armor that creaks. Wild notices Tinea and clumsily poses.
So, how do I look?
Do you want honesty?
Wild sulks.
I thought so.
Wild mournfully treks down the left hallway.
See you tonight.
Wild stops a few strides from Tinea.
Tomorrow.
He turns back.
And please, don't bring what we just talked about to my parents.
Wild clangs down the hallway.
Actually, best to avoid them altogether.
Tinea exhales.
This is not going to end well.
The blacksmith stands outside his door.
Nope. But I'd wager entertaining.
The blacksmith disappears into his room. Tinea shakes her head lightly as Wild disappears from her sight. She begins to turn towards the right pathway, but collides with the brown pony. Tinea tumbles to the ground and rubs her head. She gazes upward and jolts. Peregrine glares down at Tinea with an icy grin.
I need you to come with me, Tinea.
Tinea gulps. A vault door seals off a narrow hallway lined with iron doors. 2 armored Pegasi stand guard up front. The vault door creaks open, and Peregrine steps through. Tinea follows in her shadow. The 2 Pegasi guards salute Peregrine.
Stand down. You two are officially off duty for the next hour.
The Pegasi guards exchange confused glances.
Ma'am, we are under orders.
We can't leave this perimeter under any circumstances.
Peregrine marches up to the guards and leans in.
And who gave your commanders those orders?
Peregrine leans away from the guards as she glares at them.
I'll be commandeering this facility to have a private discussion with my son's new mere friend.
Yes, ma'am.
The Pegasi guards glance past Peregrine and towards Tinea as she cowers behind Peregrine. Peregrine stomps her hoof, and the Pegasi guards jolt to attention.
Understood.
The Pegasi guards nod in unison.
Good. Dismissed.
The Pegasi guards bolt out the vault door. It creaks shut slowly behind them. One guard takes off their helm and bows lamentably towards Tinea as the door shuts tight. Peregrine cranks a rusted door latch on an iron door and pushes it open.
This way, Pupa Tinea.
Tinea's ears twitch, and she cautiously passes through the open door. Tinea steps through the doorway and observes a perfectly square room with iron-plated walls and a dented steel desk in its center. Peregrine strides through the door and slams it shut.
Do you know why I've brought you here?
Peregrine latches the door's bar lock. Tinea sighs.
Yes, sister.
As intuitive as ever.
Peregrine is engulfed in green flame and emerges as Chrysalis.
Whatever gave me away?
I never gave any pony my full name.
Chrysalis circles around Tinea with a playful grin. Tinea's gaze follows her.
Clever girl.
Chrysalis raises Tinea's head with her hoof.
I had intended to use this fanged beast's authority to rescue you.
Chrysalis releases Tinea from her grasp and rolls her hoof in the air nonchalantly.
You would be arrested, of course, but a Cloudsdale prison break is child's play.
Tinea massages her neck where Chrysalis touched.
But you and the beast saved me the trouble.
Tinea's ears twitch. She breaks eye contact with her sister and looks down to her hooves.
So, is Peregrine, secure?
Chrysalis raises an eyebrow. Tinea raises her head and fidgets.
I mean, she saw through my disguise. The whole plan may be compromised and need to be aborted.
Chrysalis rolls her eyes.
Oh, Tinea, when will you grow a backbone?
Chrysalis points to Tinea.
And honestly, I'm surprised more ponies didn't figure you out. Such an ugly form.
Tinea peers back to her body.
But worry not. Even if that beast somehow through sheer luck guessed our agenda, It's of no consequence. No pony will hear her warning till after we fry those overgrown chickens.
Tinea leans away from Chrysalis and smiles briefly.
She's fine.
Chrysalis stomps her hoof down and startles Tinea.
Now, sweet sister, I have a new task for you.
Tinea slowly backs away from Chrysalis.
Are you sure that is wise? I could screw it up once more.
Tinea bumps into the metal table. Chrysalis steps uncomfortably close to Tinea and gently shakes her head.
Tinea, how many times do I need to remind you? You're a changeling. You can be whatever you want.
Chrysalis leans in towards Tinea as Tinea leans back over the table.
Now, I need you to be devious, preferably bold as well, but I can make do. Don't you wish to make up for your debt, sweet sister? After all, we both know whose gift Mom and Dad perished for.
Chrysalis exhales on Tinea's face as she smiles deviously. Tinea's eyes glance around the room frantically and freeze as they make eye contact with Chrysalis. She gulps.
What is it?
Chrysalis pulls herself away from Tinea and walks to the door.
Oh, a simple task.
Chrysalis unlatches the door.
A thorn that won't prove too difficult for you to pull in your current position.
The iron door creaks as Chrysalis shoves it open. Starshot sleeps in his desk chair with a pamphlet covering his eyes. Paperwork is scattered chaotically across his desk. Knocks emanate from Starshot's office door. Starshot jolts awake and sends papers flying about. He yawns and flutters to the door. Starshot opens the door quickly and immediately perks up.
Tinea!
Starshot leans to the doorway and hugs Tinea as she frowns coldly.
How wonderful to see you again so soon and not incarcerated by my wife.
Starshot releases Tinea and guides her into his office.
Actually, I just had a private discussion with Peregrine.
Starshot grimaces.
Oh.
Starshot clicks the door shut and walks away from it, shaking his head.
No need to explain, I assure you it's nothing personal. My little Spitfire has a clear trust no pony policy.
Tinea and Starshot walk side by side towards his desk.
Surely she trusts you.
Starshot rolls his eyes.
Not really, though to be fair, I can't even trust myself half the time.
Starshot steps on a small black capsule on the floor. It explodes, and smoke ensnares Starshot. Tinea stumbles backward and trips off her feet as the smoke dissipates and reveals a singed and nonchalant Starshot. He casually looks down to his soot-covered hoof.
Aha! I knew I was missing a blast cap.
Tinea trembles as she stands.
Why do you have combustibles in your office?
Starshot picks up a large exploding firework-shaped trophy laying on the floor next to his desk. He tosses it slowly to Tinea, and she fumbles it in her hooves as she catches it.
Pyrotechnic displays are my specialty.
Tinea diligently observes the trophy. A lower engraving reads, General Firefly Aerial Display Scholarship.
Truthfully, it's the only reason I got this job. Because, dear Celestia, am I horrible with paperwork. Speaking of which...
Starshot glances back at his messy desk.
I best clean this up before the flail and chain checks in.
Starshot shudders and turns his back towards Tinea. He begins rummaging through his scattered papers. Tinea watches Starshot organize his paperwork. She lifts the trophy up to her face. Her gaze bounces between the award and Starshot.
My explosive personality found its home here.
Tinea tiptoes towards Starshot. The trophy in her hoof rises higher with each step.
Peregrine, well, she has always had that scary aura about her. Gave her some trouble at first, but I can't deny it befits her command.
Tinea stops behind Starshot. The trophy-holding hoof trembles as it hovers above Starshot's head. She swings down.
But then there's Wild.
Tinea's hoof freezes mid-swing. Starshot shakes his head.
But he's bound to find his niche in a family legacy.
Tinea lays the trophy down softly on Starshot's table.
What if he's already found it?
Starshot turns around and faces Tinea with a giddy smile.
Really? Did it come to bloom in his little escapade?
Well, in a way. What I mean is...
Starshot silences Tinea with a raised hoof.
No. Let me guess.
Starshot parodies the thinker's pose.
Is it tournament agility?
No, it...
Lightning bending?
Starshot jolts upward and thrusts his hooves out with excitement.
The legendary Sonic Rainboom?
Tinea's eye twitches. She slams the hoof down on the floor.
It's none of that. or anything flying related. He's a charming biologist prodigy.
Starshot's door slowly squeaks open and reveals a nervous Wild.
I'm not interrupting anything, am I?
Wild forces a cautious laugh as he approaches Starshot. He glances away from Starshot and scratches his head.
How much did she tell you?
Tinea grows pale and queasy. Starshot twists his head into a sharp angle.
A biologist?
Tinea stumbles towards the door, unnoticed.
You were supposed to keep this a secret, Tinea.
Wild glances towards Tinea's former location and notices she's gone.
Tinea?
Wild and Starshot peer around the room and glimpse Tinea as she bolts through the doorway. Clouds fill the night sky with the white haze. Cloudsdale's grounds come to a sharp drop-off blocked by a guard railing. An attached warning sign depicts an earth pony falling off a cloud inside a red dashed circle. Tinea runs up to the edge crying and crashes into the guardrail sobbing. She glances back and sees the airbase's lights. Her gaze slowly shifts to the lit Cloudsdale Stadium. Tinea closes her teary eyes as she turns away from Cloudsdale. A pink magic flame envelops Tinea, and she emerges in her changeling form. She spreads her insect wings. She rips off her bandages as she leaps off the edge. Tinea struggles to hover, her wings flapping sporadically. Tinea's wings stop suddenly, and she plummets towards the ground. Her Raskivnik clover in her mane leaves a sparkling golden trail in her wake. Tinea tumbles uncontrollably towards the ground, with Cloudsdale floating behind her. Wind howls around Tinea as she falls. Her wings flap irregularly, out of sync. They spasm, and Tinea jolts in pain. Tinea looks towards the dark ground and hyperventilates. A searchlight strikes Tinea. Two more light up and hit her as the air raid sirens scream. Tinea squints and sees two Pegasi silhouettes emerge from above. She grins cheerfully. Tinea, changeling form, frowns behind iron bars overlooking the cloudy night sky. Tinea stands in a large iron-barred cell with one barred window. All lights are extinguished in encompassing cell rooms as silence surrounds Tinea.
I suppose this is to be expected.
Tinea glances down at hole-ridden hooves. The chain securing them together chimes as she lifts someone up slightly.
But it could be worse.
I disagree.
Tinea's eye twitches. Cadmian fades into view outside Tinea's cell. Her tail swipes across the bars.
The story's hit a standstill. It needs more tension, with a dash of suspense.
Cadmian grins mischievously.